Hello, everybody. Just flew in from LA, and boy, are my arms tired. You know what I mean? Are you chilly out there? Me too. Today, we are going to talk further about, well, art, because that's kind of what we're here to discuss. But we have 4 different people who work with art in a very different way, I think, than the last 4 that we talked about. In a different way than maybe any traditional media that has ever existed before, I don't know, 1970 potentially ever has. And that's code, specifically with code. And you can think of like everything is code. Whatever you're looking at right now, that's made of code. Pretty much anything that's on any screen is code in the background. But as you digest it from just your eyeballs to the screen, it's kind of like consider drinking a cane sugar sweetened soda. But then there are the cane farmers that have to grow the sugar that ends up in the soda. And these I would consider to be the cane farmers that work directly with the code that's in the background that sweetens all the soda that we're looking at. And we're going to explore a little bit about what that means and how it helps us express whatever it is we're trying to express in this very digital world that we live in now. And if we'd like to start from that side, a brief introduction for who you are and what you love.
Hi, my name is Laurence Fuller. I'm an actor and a poet, and I create cinematic poetry. There's some of which is going to be on these screens this evening. What do I love?
Yeah, I wanted to catch you off guard instead of saying why do you make code art, or what art form are you most passionate about? Something a little bit more open-ended, so it just falls out of you.
I love the changing seasons.
Why?
Actually, that's something I want to talk about.
We don't have to race through introductions. Go for it.
Well, the changing seasons, I think, actually has a lot to do with what we're discussing here. Because we're talking about something that's... What's the topic again? It's code.
The topic is code as human expression via code, essentially.
Human expression via code. And code is something that's predictable. And it's good that it's predictable. And we're all working on top of a system that is predictable. We need it to be predictable, right? We need it to do what it says it's going to do. Otherwise, the whole thing falls apart. So that predictability sort of forms this layer underneath that we can all sort of play on top of with our human chaos that we are. And I think that goes back to our relationship to the changing seasons. We know summer's going to come. We know winter is coming, is here. But we don't know how that's going to play out. We don't know exactly what that season will encompass. And also, like with the rising sun, we know the sun is going to rise, but we don't know what the weather will be. And we don't know what that day will bring. So I think that structure and chaos have a really important relationship to each other and an important role in what we're all doing.
They kind of can't exist without each other, much like the seasons, where summer is not summer unless there's a winter to back it up or to compare it to, right? I've always found the seasons to be a great way of marking time through an individual's past. So I've never heard anybody say it that way, but for years I've been saying, I grew up in upstate New York where it's bone-chillingly cold for 5 months of the year, and then the rest of the time is just varying degrees of different colors and different temperatures. And I could say back then, I live in Puerto Rico now, where it's just kind of always 80, 90, 100, something like that. But you could say 4 winters ago, this thing happened. And now it was just like a sunny day sometime in the past that occurred. So, I don't know, there's something really beautiful about the passing of seasons and the dichotomy between those two polar opposites. Ed,
hello,
what do you love? Who are you? What do you love?
I'll take summer in Miami. It's pretty sweet.
And winter.
Pretty hot.
Take summer anyway.
Or winter in Miami, right?
So hey, Snooptoshi. Edward is my human name. I've been dabbling in emerging tech for about 15 years now. I started in hardware. For the past 10 years, we've been building products and prototypes with companies like Samsung and Mattel, mainly focused around AI and XR. I discovered Web3 quite some time ago, back in about 2012, but then started looking at digital assets as collectibles about 3+ years ago. I saw with the advent of ordinal theory something that excited me quite a bit, which was we now have the world's largest hard drive that anyone can store whatever data on they want. And what excites me about ordinals, I think, at the moment, is what we saw in early 2021 with NFTs. We saw NFTs were the killer app that drove people who had no interest in owning Ethereum before to go out of their way to collect Ethereum to be able to buy these shiny new things. And the people making these shiny new things, it wasn't Yuga, it wasn't a metaverse, it was individual artists overcoming friction to develop something before there was an audience. And that's a very rare thing to see in any emerging tech. Traditionally, content is king, and it takes a while to get any good content on any emerging tech. So when you saw this paradigm shift, I realized flat out that this is where the best builders are focusing on. And having seen the rate that this technology has expanded and the benefits that only ordinals introduce from art, from utility, from complexity, it's unlike anything else. I mean, never before have we had a means for anyone in the world to put something somewhere once and leave it there for the rest of time. And this opens up so much potential. And the potential, in fact, we've been trying to untap with this operating system we recently inscribed called ordOS, which is a censorship-resistant, immutable OS that's accessible to everyone, powered purely by content on Bitcoin. So it's an interesting, novel idea that is meant to be a catalyst to show to developers who may not already be in Web3, look at what you can do with this underlying technology now. Because I believe we need a new class of content. With every cycle, metas change. The example I like to give is an ICO in 2014 evolved into an IEO. An IEO evolved into an IDO. It's fundamentally the same technology, just with a slightly different name and a bit of a different spin. Now, NFTs, we'd never seen digital collectibles on that scale before. But then ordinals came, a full cycle passed, and people are now starting to do the things that worked well on ETH in the first place, but that's not how the space works. What we need is new, innovative stuff that leverages ordinals in a way that no other chain is able to. And by doing that, the creators, people like Billy, people on stage here, are able to create content that will be so mesmerizing that it will drive people to buy Bitcoin, not because they believe in it as a store of value, but because that is the vehicle in which they are able to collect things. And that, I don't think we've seen yet. I don't think we've seen that killer app on Bitcoin. And I think it's down to any creator capable to start exploring how they can use this finite, constricted space that we have on Bitcoin in a way that's going to captivate the masses. And so, a long-winded answer, but fuck, I love ordinals, put it that way.
We're not in a hurry, and finally, I think that is something that encapsulates what we meant to mean when we said Web3. For the last 4 years, or however long that word has been sort of like misused and bastardized to the point where it doesn't even mean what we think it means anymore.
Web3 is what the normie no-coiners call the new wave of this space.
I thought it just referred to Twitter profile pictures. I honestly, I don't think that anyone actually means it as a new version of like a database that we're creating.
Well, I mean, think of it this way. Web 1 was a read-only internet, You could read whatever was in front of you, but that was it. Web 2 was a read-write internet. You would then start to be able to put your own content on there.
Like social media.
Social media.
In general.
Web 3 is read, write, and own. And this is a very, very important distinction that we've never seen before. And that opens up, again, just a whole world of potential. Now, what I do believe is we need some developers that are not necessarily the pure artists, but we need coders, developers, creators of immersive and interactive content that are able to understand what recursion is and start building stuff far more complex than anyone here is currently thinking. And I think indie game developers are primed for this. I don't know if you're familiar with the gaming space, but if you want to release a game on Steam, it's 11,000 games get added a day. And that's a lot of noise to cut through. And yet these people, who are incredibly skilled individuals, are creating amazing content but cannot form a community because of the noise. And yet you look to Web3 and you see individuals who are creating subpar content that have 50,000 followers overnight. And to me, it doesn't make fucking sense. When you have some people, a 1 or 2 person team that can build something like Stardew Valley, if they wanted to, they could build something absolutely phenomenal in 350 kilobytes. And that, I think, is a thing when you tell them, fuck Google Play Store, fuck the Apple App Store, fuck Steam, fuck Epic, put this thing on blockchain and share it, and anyone can play it for the rest of the time. You never have to update it or pay for it or anything ever again. Like, this, I think, is powerful. This will give us the next 5 million users that we're all hoping for.
The creativity mandated by having such control.
Snoop for president.
Yeah, Snoop for president.
20, yeah.
Billy, who are you and what do you love?
I'm Billy Restey, generative artist on Bitcoin. At the end of the day, Bitcoin is software, Bitcoin is code. It's I think it's pretty cool to inscribe code on Bitcoin. Sorry, I'm a little down right now, adjusting to Bitcoin was 6 figures when I woke up. Now it's high 5 figures, and I'm just kind of adjusting to the change.
Just thinking Australian dollars like Brett was.
Yeah,
it's still
exactly.
over 100.
But yeah, I feel like I was in Marfa and I chopped it up with some ETH people, and the generative art community is so big, and I feel like Bitcoin is like the premier place for generative art, and it's just really cool to, it's just powerful, right? Like we know inscribing large raster files can be pricey, but with one line of code and recursion, what Snoop was talking about, I mean, there's endless possibilities. It was cool to hear Casey talking about like galleries, like using recursion where you can kind of have one inscription that highlights other inscriptions. And at the end of the day, like Bitcoin has always been just something I like tinkering with, and it's an incredible ecosystem to be a part of. I'll keep it short, but yeah, looking forward to just diving into more about like the topic, code, AI, and
Bitcoin wants code. Bitcoin is like the easiest blockchain to just throw code on because you don't have to interact with any other layers. There's no smart contracts. There's no added bullshit to it. You just kind of throw it there and, well, not hopefully it looks right. Hopefully you have it looking right before it does that. And lastly, but not leastly,
I am Stephen Morse. You can see, that's my handle also. Yeah, it works very well. I am a lifelong artist. I've spent my life in various aspects of the art field, and with Web3 focusing on my own creations. And currently for the past year I've been focusing on generative art on Bitcoin. And that's how I found myself in this topic of conversation, because we're talking about code as human expression and then as an art form. And expression for artists, I mean, that's following your passion and expressing yourself through your art. So I kind of see, you know, algorithmic art, generative art, code-based art, which works very well on Bitcoin. It's natively on-chain, it works very well, right? But you're taking these lines of code, which I see as, you know, brushes on a canvas. And you're amalgamating all these brushes on your canvas to then create something, but in a technical form that can really elevate a concept. You know, your concept, whatever your concept for cosmogenesis, it was life. So taking this concept of life and putting it on chain, but through these lines of code, yeah. So expressing that, and I think that's a very powerful new thing. And doing it on Bitcoin and having it there forever is obviously, you know, really elevating a next level.
there's a ton of ways to express ourselves as human, whether it's language or paint or music, which I guess is a form of language, sort of. All of it falls into the category of art, and I think art falls into the category of ways of communicating that are not direct from person to person, but sort of like allow us to throw something out into public view and allows anybody who happens to bump into it to experience it in whatever way it is they do. So it's like, it's a way of communicating across all kinds of barriers, and whether that's time or geography or whatever. And there are a lot of ways to do this. You work with AI, is this true?
It's true.
True, I've heard this about you. So I don't know if anybody else here is really super into AI, correct? Yeah, so everybody's using AI. How does code allow you to do something, well, AI and code, I guess, because AI is code, allow you to fulfill whatever purpose it is you're looking to push? And I swear, I took a shower today. I don't know what this fly is doing around me. I'm sure you can see it perfectly because I'm backlit. How does AI and code allow you to better express what you would have been trying to do, let's say if it was like 70 years ago, through the mediums you had available to you then? What is it about this, which probably involves Bitcoin, that allows you to do a better job of that or be more explicit?
Well, I won't take it 70 years back. I'll take it about 30 years back to like my childhood, when I grew up in a home where my mother was a sculptor, my father was an art critic, and we had on the walls all around us the amazing, beautiful paintings. Like every art was all around. And I would be found sat in the living room staring at a TV screen. I watched movies obsessively since I was really young. And I was always stuck between this dichotomy of this still image that was on the wall and the moving image that was playing out in movies. And I guess I could never reconcile those two things as an artist and for my own coming into being until those two things could come together. And like I can bring them together with AI, and not like everyone can now. So and yeah, I did do a piece on Bitcoin.
On that note, I wanted to bring up, like, you know, Art Basel Week. There's a ton of traditional artwork displayed through Miami Beach. It's all incredible. But the digital art presence is like minuscule. It's tiny. And I think it's cool when you have artwork that can only be enjoyed natively digital. And I think people are just, you know, they're kind of slow on the uptick on like understanding digital scarcity and like digital art in general. I put out a piece that changes every 10 minutes with the blockchain. You can't just print that out and put that on the wall. Like, you have to enjoy that on the Bitcoin blockchain. And we don't really have screens and apps and technology that can actually display that in a like meaningful way. So it's actually really interesting to think about. Like, that is a very we are so early statement, but like, yeah, I'm excited for the art explosion and cultural explosion that's kind of happening on ordinals. We're almost 2 years into it, folks. I mean, 2 years, and these crazy people are still, you know, we're thriving.
Digital art is still new, even though like there's been generative art since before I was born. I was born in 1984, so like computers existed before that, but they weren't super common. People were experimenting with algorithmic art back then. A lot of modern galleries and museums have not taken the dive to even respect this as an actual art form because it hasn't existed for like more than a generation or two. And I think kind of like vintage cars, they're just like a 1990 Ford Contour is stupid in 1990. But now you look back and you're like, remember when that was like kind of stupid? Now it's cooler because it was so stupid back then. And it was like, remember when every car was turquoise for like a year? That sucked at the time, but looking back, it's like very indicative of something that was maybe an important statement that something was making, even if it didn't mean to do that. And I don't think we've had that moment yet with digital art because the word digital is just new. It's like not something that we've had a lot of time to mess around with. Same question.
I could talk a lot about AI. We developed a free-to-use AI platform called BitBlocks. We trained custom models on various canonical IP from different projects in the space and provided token-gated access to communities to then be able to create content in the styles of their favorite projects. It was a fun experiment. AI is advancing at such a tremendous rate, as everyone's well aware, that this is becoming a tool that I mean, it's a terrifying tool, in all honesty. It's terrifying due to the amount of data that you will willingly and freely share to other people's computers, so effectively a server, and you will treat that thing like an extension of your brain, and you'll share more private information with that than you will with your own fucking family and with your own emails. So first and foremost, the tech is moving so quickly, it's terrifying. But with that terror comes some immense potential. I would love to challenge anyone here over the course of the next couple of days, open up Claude, open up ChatGPT, tell it to make me a self-contained index.html using 3.js or P5.js and make it cool. And just see what it kicks out. Honestly, it's very easy. And with the rise of this technology, now you're not going to create something world-renowned on the first go, but it's beginning to show you just how complex this AI technology is capable of helping absolutely anyone create whatever they want. And we're so nascent. I mean, the technology today is still so dumbed down. We're still stuck in the age of using the few centralized companies, you know, the Googles, the Facebooks, to process the data. But within the next couple of years, we're going to see a transition towards local AI. AI being processed on your phone, AI being processed on your console, on your desktop that is not being sent to another cloud. And with that, the open source community then starts to open up and provide yet more tools. So, like, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface for what AI is even capable of doing. Like, we're like cavemen, you know, we have a new technology, the first thing we're going to do is like, right, I'm going to draw my hand on the wall. But the reality is, this thing can do so much more. And, like, I don't know, fucking 5 years from now, none of us are going to be working.
Speaking of which, I have a very specific question for you, if I might ask that. It'll parlay into whatever you're about to say, I'm sure. your early works were like sort of multimedia within digital. They came across very differently. They were stylistically very different, but your more recent works have developed a fingerprint that is like very uniquely yours. How have you incorporated AI and code into making this like more funneled, cohesive, intentional output? And answer whatever other question you were going to answer too. I want to lose
Yeah,
it.
no, totally. I was gonna say, we're entering an era where ideas are more important than execution. Like, I spent decades becoming a 3D artist, like 20,000, 100,000 hours pushing pixels on a screen, and now ideas are more valuable than execution, right? Like Snoop said, like, play with the tools. Like, AI is the most powerful digital tool we have at our disposal. And we need to be using those tools, not fearing the tools. I see a lot of artists like shy away, like it's too easy to create stuff, and it's like, well, then the best stuff should rise to the top, right? But yeah, like most of my explorations on Bitcoin have come from like tinkering and playing around. It's kind of crazy to think that recursion didn't ship with the first version of Ord. Like, it wasn't out until I think almost like a year in, and then I inscribed 400 pieces and kind of stitched together like one massive 6.2 megabyte file. So everything has been kind of like an exploration, and I use AI in my workflow. If I have an idea and I don't know how to execute, that's okay, because there's tools now that can kind of get you from point A to point B, or at least give you a starting point, right? And like you said, like, if you have an idea, like, just roll the dice. Be like, hey, I want to do this, and see if you can get like a starting point. And I use that kind of thing a lot, and I cycle through. I feel like I go through a lot of bad ideas before I come to a good idea, and AI allows me to do that like 1,000 times faster than if I was doing that on my own. I mean, if you've ever drawn or created art, like, yeah, the first drawing isn't always the best drawing, right?
It'd be weird if it was.
I mean, maybe for you, because those rats are
Good old
awesome.
rat.
I'm doing everything for the first time every time, so I don't know if I
So
know that.
I'm curious, I'm sure you've probably already done this, but for anyone here who hasn't, if you use ChatGPT, you can create what's called a custom GPT. You can download Casey's blog, you can download the Ordinal handbook, store them as PDFs, upload them as a custom GPT, tell it not to read the fucking internet, and what you have is basically some knowledge that you can start picking brains to help you answer some of the more complex shit that Ordinal theory does introduce in a way that is slightly more digestible. I'm happy to share my Ordinal GPT link if anyone wants it, but honestly, it doesn't take long to put together, and my God, that thing makes life easier. So, food for thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's like having an expert on ordinals. What Snooptoshi was saying, like, you give it the files and it becomes an expert instantly, and then, like, if you ever run into a snag, like, you don't have to search through the handbook, like, it will just give you the answer. And that's the era we're in. Like, growing up, my father was always, he would never give me the answer. He'd be like, go look it up, and we had these encyclopedias. And then, as a teenager, it was like, Google it, or let me Google that for you. Now, instead of like querying the results and searching through which is the best result, you get the answer. So I'm excited to see how that accelerates human creativity. I think we're going to be using, and this is the first step in AI. It's not even really intelligence. Like, they're like glorified chatbots, like
Or
super
is
chatbots.
it? Is it
So are we,
pretending it's
though.
not?
Yeah.
Like,
So,
I know a lot of people who are just glorified chatbots too. It's
like,
not, it's
I
pretty close.
firmly believe we're going to be using this technology to cure cancer, to come up with renewable energy sources. And it'll be exciting to see the world where you can plug into a native digital currency and get instant settlement. Because a 10-minute block time is better than a 3-week credit card settlement. So, like, let's at least start there. And then, if we need Solana, probably not.
A lot of people seem to be like ego scared of AI and what it's going to do, but I just like to remind everybody who's like ignoring this because AI is terrifying to them, that like Microsoft Excel did not negate the accountant, and the synthesizer did not negate the piano, and yada, yada, yada. All the technological innovations that ultimately we're scared of as they are occurring, they make our lives better, and they allow us to free up time to do other more maybe pressingly important shit with our brains that so far are the most intelligent thing that we know of.
Do you remember teachers would tell you, put that calculator away? You're not going to walk around with a calculator in your pocket every day.
Yeah, that's a fun one. That's a really good one to look back at, right? Yeah, good thing that's not stored anywhere immutable. Same question. How does this allow you to express things you wouldn't otherwise be able to do?
AI itself is productivity on steroids, but it, like everything else in our space, kind of gets lumped into this one thing when it's really whatever you need it to be. So, I see AI as this tool that can, expand your concepts and ideas, or I see it as a tool that can literally bring your imagination to life. And you can use it as simply as, ChatGPT and Dolly, or you can create your own custom models and spend months working on an image. So like anything else, I think there's levels to it, but at the same time, yeah, you can utilize AI and create your own custom bots and do whatever you need and just enhance your productivity to then really enhance and elevate your art. I mean, to be able to talk to like the GPT and talk about your ideas and concepts and think outside the box and then create something that you never even necessarily thought of, but it's coming from your own experience and your own expression. I think there's really something very powerful to that. We're definitely just scratching the surface, but it still comes down to the human and the human experience and what their experience is to then express their vision and their passion with the help and assistance of AI.
Something we were recently talking about, you and I, in DMs, was the way that people experience the art that you put out, or the way that maybe you intended to be experienced, and there are like road bumps or ways that people can miss out on what it is that you're trying to say because of the medium through which it's displayed or interacted with or whatever. How would, in an ideal world, how do people interact with the things you create? Like, what do you intend for that?
I'm creating art that's an experience that reflects you and you reflect it, and then you can then export from infinitely. It's basically life, but like we were saying with the sandboxing of these images, you're not getting the full experience of generative art when you're going to Magic Eden. You're seeing a sandbox preview. So like they were saying in an earlier discussion, you have to go to the content link and actually see the actual content to then experience.
There's a click of friction between
exactly
what someone might see in passing versus how you might actually want them to interact with it.
Exactly.
Has that been a significant challenge? And is there does someone need to build something? Is there even a possibility of building something that removes that friction? Or do you like the friction because then only the people that really wanted to see it get to see it the way that it was intended,
I think I have to say I like the friction and I don't. I think, it's probably going to be easier as we go forward and more people become educated and there's better tools to even see the hierarchy of parent-child provenance when you're looking at a piece, for instance. But that educational element is great, but at the same time, we're in a fast-moving space where a lot of people don't take the time to look at these things. And you definitely tend to appreciate the collectors that do take the time and actually do want to experience the art and see something that's there that we built and put there literally forever. So, I like it and I don't, but I definitely want everyone to have that experience. I guess that really just takes time and propagating that message and that educational element.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like one of the coolest things about ordinals is obfuscated by marketplaces. You just kind of see the representation of an image, but I grab the inscription ID, I copy and paste it into ord.io or ordScan, and I look at the code. I want to see how did they do that? Is it what it says it is? How are they using recursion? Where's the JavaScript file? And it's really cool. I did that just yesterday. I collected a piece of art, but I was like, all right, what's under the hood? And I feel like looking under the hood is what separates ordinals, inscriptions, from ETH NFTs. I just feel like there's a lot more going on and a lot of power there without using smart contracts. And I know I care about that, but the average user doesn't care about that. And I'll collect stuff based on aesthetics, but I do think it's important to kind of see or understand how it's being created and like what the artist or team went through to get that on chain. I think when people kind of start collecting early inscriptions and once we kind of hit critical mass, I think a lot of big collectors are going to be looking at that kind of friction that people went through to put those inscriptions on chain.
It's like the wine world, where like it's just all grape juice until you start paying attention deeply to it, and you realize that different years, different plots, different producers or chateaus or whatever, there are like insanely intricate differences between all those things that you really just have to stop and think about. And that maybe that is the friction point. Maybe that's the barrier. Just it's how much do they care? How much time do they want to invest to look at something like this?
Well, again, like you touched on something interesting. Now we're showing people pictures on a website. That works. But ordinal introduces a lot more complexity. Now, when you load up a page on magiceden.org.io that has 1,000 HTML files all trying to load, things get a little prickly pretty fast. And a big part of why we built ordOS was so that we have that native way of being able to display an ordinal the way the artist always wanted it to be displayed. And so, again, I would urge anyone who's ever had any issues getting something to display properly, shout out to some individuals here who know what I'm talking about, it will probably just plug and play in a way that will be a lot more browser friendly. Let's just say they're looking at a website covered in images that are slowly eating up all of your RAM. So it is, again, important to be able to demonstrate the artwork the way it was meant to be created. You can't just have an off-chain image representation. I mean, you can, but you shouldn't. Have an off-chain image representation. You should show these things as they truly were meant to be seen. So yeah, check it out.
Again, removal of friction. I think this is all what we're going for, is bringing the things we love up to the front and showing people things that we've built in the back up front. And you work in a decidedly different medium. Have you found it difficult to get the point across, I guess? Because it's maybe easier to get people to just look at an image in the background somewhere, even if they're not fully interacting with it. What in your medium has been a tangle with regards to getting people to digest it the way you want to put it out?
This is something interesting when you guys were talking about the productivity of AI. So the piece that I have that's playing after the Bitcoin Awards, it's going to be, the challenge was having it on 50 screens, and it goes for about 15 minutes long. And for months, I'd been working with a producer who's a friend of mine in Hollywood on this specific story that he had developed in this specific IP involving well-known actors. And we were, for months I was working away at adapting this piece that it was going to be. And then about a week ago, he got me on the phone and he pulled my rights to adapt the piece. And in order to put me into a position, it was a classic Hollywood move, right? He was trying to get me to do something else. And he was looking at me and was like, well, you don't have much time, so I guess you're gonna have to do that, And then I'm on the other side going, you don't know what is possible, right? You don't know what I can do now with the time that I have. And so, yeah, it was a week of sleepless nights, but I completely changed the project and have a brand new 50 screen, 15 minutes. And, I could tell that Hollywood producer, I didn't tell him to go fuck himself, but basically that was the move. And before all this technology, I would have been screwed. I would have been absolutely screwed.
So I'm going to take that as a final answer to the question I'm now going to ask you guys. And if you want to add an addendum, I think we're getting kicked off stage soon. But constriction is kind of the name of the game with Bitcoin. And I think with art, constriction is the name of the game. You see a lot of artists that experience a ton of pain and mental instability are some of the most creative people on the planet because they have the most weird things to say that are like difficult to describe in language to another person. So you have just described, Bitcoin does that, right? But there's only 4 megabytes per block or 400 kilobytes per standard transaction. That's a lot of constriction compared to other blockchains. Constriction point in your life, like a colossal fuck up or something you're not good at that made you better at something else in 30 seconds or less, Ed.
Necessity is a driver of innovation. And again, The Legend of Zelda was a 244 kilobyte game. That's all I'm going to say.
Boom. Billy, is there anything you're terrible at that is a skill set where we are now, or some constriction that you've faced in your life that has allowed you to flourish as an artist?
That is a tough thing. I feel like life is just, constantly improving things that you're bad at.
There's no end. It's not like there's a goal and you're done. It's like, I'm done being Billy now. I can just quit.
Yeah,
I'll go die.
That's why I like golf so much, because golf is so impossible. It's like you could spend a lifetime trying to get better and you'll still suck when you die. But I feel fortunate to be able to continue honing my skills and craft, and but AI has kind of helped with execution things, because you could spend a lifetime being a scientist and then pivot and all of a sudden you're an artist. I was checking out some work by this mathematician at the Untitled gallery yesterday. Just incredible stuff. The guy retired and then he started creating art, and it was the most incredible mathematic drawings you've ever seen. I mean, he passed away and the collection sold for millions, but it's just kind of crazy that it wasn't until retirement that he found that expression, and I think that's really beautiful. I'm trying to chase that earlier in life.
You can spend your whole life honing or sharpening a knife that you don't know that you're going to use to cut some thing that's not steak. You're gonna have to end up doing something totally different with that tool, and maybe that's kind of the point. Anything you're really bad at or have encountered that has been a thorn in your side that made you cooler?
I'm an artist. I think everything's bad, and I hate everything that I know. I'm just.
That's a necessary viewpoint.
I think.
Maybe.
I think with Bitcoin, we're talking like limitations or things that we're talking about constriction. I think that's where generative code, based art really shines. It's creating AI art, large files, making them even larger, amalgamating them with AI to make them even larger. They don't fit on Bitcoin. It's never going to work. But I think the biggest thing is, it's educating collectors on what it is. And that's kind of the biggest point of friction. But that's a goal, and once I achieve that, we'll find another goal.
Onward and upward. Thanks, guys, for talking with us today. Much appreciated. Let's hear it
Thank
for the
you.
gang. See you all later.
Thank you.